My husband filed for divorce not long after I inherited my mom's money. He really thought he'd struck gold, but he had no idea my mom was 3 steps ahead of him the whole time. Right after my mother passed and left me everything she had, Tyler, my husband, suddenly turned into the world's most loving and attentive man. But the moment I made it clear that he couldn't treat my inheritance like a joint bank account, he started acting like he couldn't stand being in the same house as me. What happened after that? Well, let's just say he never saw it coming. I always knew my mom was sharp as a tack. She had this way of reading people like they were open books, always seemed to be one move ahead. Still, I never realized just how far ahead she'd been thinking, not until after she was gone. Her final move? It left everybody stunned. The last few years with Mom were complicated. There was this emotional distance between us I couldn't seem to fix, no matter how hard I tried. One of the biggest issues was her silent disapproval of Tyler. She never came out and said it directly, but the message came through loud and clear in other ways. Whenever we visited her warm little house in Maplewood, she'd get quiet anytime Tyler started going on about his big ideas and dreams. The moment he brought up needing money for some can't-miss investment or another business venture, her eyebrows would twitch, and she'd just listen, carefully. Her questions during those conversations? They never really felt like questions. They were more like quiet judgments, like she already knew the answers and didn't like what they told her. One Sunday, after an especially awkward dinner where Tyler had pitched his latest cryptocurrency scheme, I finally snapped. "Why can't you just be happy for me, Mom?" I asked her, frustration bubbling over. She calmly set down her coffee cup, always so deliberate in her movements, and said, "I'm happy when you're truly happy, sweetheart. I just want you to be sure you're seeing everything clearly." "He's not perfect," I replied, a little too quickly. "But he's the man I chose. Isn't that enough?" She didn't push back. Just gave me that look, the one where her eyes said more than words ever could. Like she was seeing the whole chessboard, while I was still learning how the pieces moved. It drove me crazy, but somehow, it also made me feel protected. "I love you, Rachel," she said quietly. "More than you realize." Back then, I thought she was just being overbearing. Maybe even trying to control my life. I figured that's just what moms do, especially when they think their daughter picked the wrong guy. Tyler definitely wasn't what she had pictured for me. He worked a middle-of-the-road job at some marketing firm, drove an old Honda Civic with more dents than paint, and had this habit of ordering the priciest item on the menu whenever someone else was footing the bill. But he made me laugh. He remembered the little things, like my birthday. He brought me chicken soup when I had the flu. And at the time, I really thought that was enough. Now, looking back, I can see that Mom saw something in him that I was too blinded to recognize. She knew the second money got involved, Tyler's true self would surface, and she'd already been preparing for that reality before I even knew there was a storm coming. When Mom died suddenly from a heart attack at just 62, I was completely shattered. The grief hit me like a freight train. We had so many unfinished conversations. Too many quiet gaps between us that would never be filled now. I kept replaying every fight in my head. Every time I'd chosen to protect Tyler's feelings instead of just going to see her. All those missed chances, and now there'd be no more Thanksgivings. No more Sunday phone calls. Nothing. Our last disagreement? It was about Thanksgiving, actually. Tyler had wanted to spend it with his brother in Phoenix instead of staying local with Mom. I took his side. And now, well, that was the last Thanksgiving I'd ever get with her. The funeral was beautiful. Heartbreaking, but beautiful. People came from every corner of her life. Her co-workers from the accounting firm she'd been with for 30 years shared stories about how witty and generous she was. Her book club ladies talked about her contagious laugh and her famous homemade brownies. The neighbors told me how she never forgot to bring in their mail when they were out of town. Tyler was supportive during that time, I'll give him that. He stepped up. Helped with the funeral plans when I was too numb to make decisions. Handled the phone calls from relatives. Put together the reception at her place. He even helped box up her belongings. Though I couldn't help but notice how interested he seemed in her jewelry box and all the antique furniture. "Your mom had good taste," he said, running his fingers across her mahogany dining table like he was appraising it. Bet this stuff's worth a ton. At the time, I was too deep in grief to pay his comments much attention. Then, just 3 weeks after we buried her, I got a call that would change everything. "Rachel, I need you to come into the office," said Mr. Whitaker, my mom's lawyer. His voice was soft, careful. "There are some things about your mother's estate we need to discuss face to face." The next morning, I drove to his firm in downtown Chicago. His office looked like something out of a movie: polished wood, shelves lined with leather-bound books, the kind of place that made you instinctively lower your voice. "Your mother left everything to you," he said, pushing a thick folder across his desk. "The Maplewood house, her retirement funds, her savings, and some investments I don't believe you were aware of. It's a sizable estate." I flipped through the paperwork, stunned by what I was seeing. "The total inheritance is just over $650,000, he said. "This can't be real," I whispered. "She was comfortable, sure, but not rich. Your mother kept her finances very private," he explained. "She'd been carefully saving and investing for decades. Plus, she inherited a good amount from your grandmother that she never touched. Her main goal was to make sure you were secure." I drove home with that folder sitting on the seat next to me, feeling like I was carrying something radioactive. My head was spinning. Just a few weeks earlier, I'd been drowning in grief. Now, suddenly, I was financially secure, maybe even set for life. But what really caught me off guard wasn't the size of the inheritance. It was Tyler's reaction when I told him. At first, he seemed genuinely happy for me. "Wow, Kel," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Your mom always believed in you. She wanted to make sure you were okay. You deserve this, babe." I actually breathed a sigh of relief. I'd been worried the money might change things between us, but in that moment, it felt like we were still okay. Then, a few days later, things started to shift. "You know what we should do," he said one morning, slicing into his toast like he was carving a plan into stone. "Maybe it's time to trade in that old Toyota of yours. You should be driving something nice." "My Camry runs just fine, Tyler," I said, giving my coffee a stir. "I don't need a new car." "But now that you've got the inheritance," he said, eyes lighting up, "we could finally get something nice. Like a BMW. Or maybe that Lexus you always liked whenever we passed the dealership." There was something too eager in the way he said it, something that made my skin prickle. But I brushed it off. Maybe he really was just trying to look out for me. Maybe this was his awkward way of helping me get through the grief. Then the vacation ideas started rolling in. "I found this amazing beach house in the Hamptons," he said a few days later, laptop open and beaming like a kid with a new toy. "We could rent it for the whole summer, just the two of us. Wouldn't that be perfect? No work, no stress, just sunshine and relaxation." "That sounds pricey," I said, trying not to sound too cautious. "So what? You've got the money now. We should enjoy life while we're young enough to actually enjoy it." And it didn't stop there, he kept pitching ideas like he was on a roll. A weekend getaway to Napa Valley. Season tickets to the Cubs. Membership at that upscale country club where his boss played golf. Then came the big one. "We should seriously think about moving," he said one night over dinner. "You're always saying the kitchen's too cramped. We could find a place that actually makes you happy. Big yard, maybe even a pool. Something you deserve." All his suggestions sounded reasonable on the surface, like things a caring husband might want for his wife. But there was something off. The way he talked about spending the money, it wasn't about us. It was about the money. There was a glint in his eye, something greedy and calculating, like when he stared too long at dessert menus in fancy restaurants. "I need time to think about everything," I told him, setting my fork down. "It's a lot to process, and I don't want to make any rash decisions." He paused mid-bite, looking at me like I'd just insulted his intelligence. "Think about it? Rachel, this is the chance we've been waiting for. We could finally live the life we always talked about. Why are you being so uptight?" "Because it's not our money, Tyler," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "It's mine. My mother left it to me." And just like that, everything changed. His face twisted, confusion giving way to something colder. Something ugly. That's when Tyler started slipping away. The sweet, doting husband? Gone. Vanished without a trace. What I got instead was someone distant and cold, a stranger who happened to wear my husband's face. Tyler stopped bringing me my morning coffee, a small thing, maybe, but he'd done it almost every day for 8 years. He quit asking about my day when I got home. The sweet little compliments, the reassurances that I deserved the inheritance? They dried up like a well in a drought. He moved into the guest room, saying he wanted to give me space to grieve, but I knew better. He was mad. Furious I wouldn't give him access to the money. And instead of saying it out loud, he turned it into punishment. Our house got quiet. Too quiet. Evenings passed in silence, the two of us glued to our phones or pretending to be interested in whatever was on the TV. When we did speak, it was all business. Did you pay the power bill? We're out of milk. No more inside jokes. No more random hugs. Just cold, sterile cohabitation. He started dropping the ball on the little things, leaving dishes in the sink, knowing I'd clean them up. Forgetting to take the trash out, like he couldn't be bothered. Working late more and more, claiming he had deadlines at work. One night, I got up to grab a glass of water and saw him on his laptop, deep in a tab full of divorce attorney websites. He didn't know I'd seen it. I slipped back to bed, heart pounding, feeling like I'd been sucker punched. It turns out, while I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace, Tyler had been quietly building a storm, one that would soon tear everything apart. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. The tension was like smoke, thick and choking, even when no words were spoken. I avoided bringing up the inheritance altogether, afraid it would trigger another cold front from him. So I started eating alone. I'd curl up with one of Mom's old novels, trying to find comfort in her words when I couldn't find it in the man sitting across the hall. One night, I called my best friend Jenna just to vent. He's acting like I robbed him, I told her, trying not to cry. Like I'm being selfish for not letting him blow through everything Mom worked her whole life to save. There was a pause on the other end. Then Jenna said softly, "Rachel, is it possible that this is who he really is? Your mom never liked him, right?" Her words landed hard. Mom had tried to warn me, all those quiet looks, the skeptical pauses, the way she went silent anytime Tyler brought up money. She saw something I didn't, I said in a whisper. Maybe it's time you start seeing it too. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't prepared to admit that maybe my entire marriage had been a mirage. That I'd built a life with someone who only saw me as a means to a payday. I kept hoping that Tyler would snap out of it. That he'd remember I was his wife, not his financial plan. I was wrong. The day everything finally cracked wide open was exactly 1 month after the inheritance news. I was in the kitchen making spaghetti and meatballs, his favorite, and honestly, a last-ditch effort to reconnect, when he walked in and dropped the bomb like it was no big deal. "I think we should separate," he said, flat as cardboard. I set the spoon down slowly and turned to him. His face was expressionless, like he was reading off a script. "Separate?" I echoed, thinking maybe I'd misheard him. "This isn't working, Rachel," he said. "We're on different paths. You've changed since your mom passed." "I've changed?" I almost laughed, but the sound that came out had more bitterness than humor. "You've been treating me like an ATM for the past month," I shot back. His face flushed, his voice rising. "That's not fair. I was trying to help build a better life for both of us, but you're too selfish to share. You're hoarding that money like some dragon sitting on gold." "Selfish?" I repeated, my temper flaring. "My mom just died, and all you care about is how fast we can burn through her money? She spent her whole life saving it, and now you want to waste it on cars and beach houses?" He just shrugged, like we were discussing weekend plans. "Maybe we'd both be better off divorced." I stared at him, taking in the stranger standing in my kitchen, the man I'd chosen over family dinners, the one I'd defended to my mother again and again. And in that moment, I finally saw what she had seen all along. That realization? It broke me. I mean, really broke me, like something inside me just cracked wide open. But then, almost immediately, another thought slipped into my mind, something I'd nearly forgotten. A moment from Mr. Whitaker's office. That thick folder of legal documents I'd barely skimmed while drowning in grief. I took a deep breath. Okay, I said calmly, wiping my hands on a dish towel. But before we do anything, there's something you should probably know. Tyler's eyebrows jumped. He looked thrown off. I think he expected me to fall apart, cry, beg, try to fix things. He must have rehearsed this scene in his head a dozen times, picturing himself as the one with the upper hand. The one walking away while I clung to his leg, sobbing. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice already suspicious. I didn't answer right away. I just walked into our home office, knelt in front of the fireproof safe, and pulled out the folder from Mom's lawyer. The one that had been collecting dust since the funeral. The one Mr. Whitaker had told me, kindly but firmly, not to ignore. Back in the kitchen, I laid the folder on the counter and slid it across to him. "Check out the highlighted section on page 12, I said. Tyler opened it like he already knew what it said, like he expected to see some financial breakdown he could argue about. But as his eyes moved over the words, his expression changed. First confused. Then stunned. And finally, pale. He read it out loud, barely above a whisper. "If my daughter Rachel is married at the time of my death, she will not receive access to any portion of her inheritance unless and until she is legally divorced. No spouse or third party may claim or access any portion of my estate under any circumstances." The only sound in the kitchen was the gentle bubbling of the pasta water behind me. "You mean," his voice cracked. "If we get divorced, then you get the money?" "Every single cent," I said, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. "But if we stay married, the inheritance skips right over me, and goes straight to the American Heart Association." He stared at the paper like it had personally betrayed him. "Your mother planned this," he murmured. "She knew." "She did," I nodded. 2 years ago, actually. Right after you started hitting her up for investment money, remember?" His face went white. Then red. Then white again. We both knew the moments I was referring to, the time he asked her to help fund his buddy's food truck idea. The time he wanted her to co-sign a loan for crypto mining equipment. The time he hinted we'd need help with a down payment on a bigger house. She'd smiled politely back then and declined, never making a scene. But now I saw it clearly, she was documenting. Preparing. Building a quiet defense for a battle I didn't even know I'd need to fight. She set a trap," he said, slumping into a chair like the air had gone out of him. "She protected me," I corrected. "That's what mothers do." He sat there with his head in his hands, stunned. Then, like clockwork, the denial kicked in. "But I already spoke to a lawyer," he muttered. "He said I'm entitled to half of anything gained during the marriage." "Not this," I replied, steady as stone. "Inheritance with conditions is protected, especially when the terms are this airtight. Mom worked with Patterson and a whole team of estate planners. They covered every angle. There's nothing for you to claim." He looked up at me with panic in his eyes. "So if I go through with the divorce, I walk away with nothing?" I nodded. "That's right. But if I divorce you? I get everything Mom wanted me to have." He swallowed hard. I could practically see the gears in his head spinning, calculating, reaching, trying to salvage the situation. "Rachel, please," he said, softening his tone like flipping a switch. "I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. I was just excited. We don't have to end this. We can still make it work." But it was too late. I'd seen the real Tyler, the version of him that showed up the moment money was involved. I'd watched him switch from love to cold indifference in a blink. I'd felt him disappear the second I didn't give him access to something that wasn't his. "No, Tyler," I said quietly. "We can't fix this. Because now I know you didn't marry me for who I am. You married me for what you thought I'd give you. That's not fair. Isn't it? You were ready to leave me 5 minutes ago. The only reason you're backpedaling now is because you found out you won't get a cent." He opened his mouth, then shut it again. We both knew I was right. "I'll file the paperwork tomorrow," I said simply. "You can stay in the guest room until you find a place." I turned off the stove and dumped the pasta into the colander. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt at peace. My mother had seen this moment coming. She knew exactly what would happen. And she'd left me the tools I'd need to handle it when it did. 3 months later, it was official. I was divorced, and $650,000 richer. Tyler tried to contest the terms at first, but his attorney shut that down real quick. Mom's will was airtight. Bulletproof. Not a loophole in sight. The divorce went smoother than I ever imagined. Tyler moved out, headed across the city to some cramped studio apartment. He took his dented Honda Civic, a few clothes, and whatever pride he had left. He even left behind the engagement ring, which, as it turns out, he'd bought with a credit card he never fully paid off. And me? I kept everything else. The moment the paperwork was finalized, I made some changes. I walked away from the marketing job that had me working 60-hour weeks for peanuts. Instead, I started doing freelance consulting, choosing my own clients, setting my own hours, and working on my terms. That inheritance gave me the freedom to build a life I actually wanted. I sold the apartment and bought a beautiful craftsman house in Evanston, just a short drive from where Mom used to live. It has the big kitchen I always dreamed of, granite countertops, a sunlit reading nook, and a garden where I've started growing tomatoes, just like she used to. I finally took that solo trip to Italy I'd been talking about since college, the one Tyler always said we couldn't afford. I wandered through Tuscany, ate my weight in pasta, and stood in front of Renaissance paintings that Mom had always wanted to see. Every sunset felt like a love note from her. And on the mantel in my new living room, there's a photo of the two of us, the last one we ever took together. In it, she's smiling that knowing smile I used to find so irritating. Now? I get it. Next to the photo sits a framed copy of her will. Her final gift. Tyler still texts me from time to time, usually late, usually drunk. He says he's sorry. Says he misses me. Says he regrets everything. But I know what he really misses. It's not me. It's the money. Meanwhile, I'm living the life my mom always hoped I'd have. I'm dating again, slowly, carefully, with my eyes wide open. I volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends. I host book club nights in my living room, just like she used to. And sometimes, when I'm sitting out in the garden with a cup of coffee, I talk to her. Thanks, Mom, I say out loud, looking up at the sky. You saved me. In more ways than I ever realized. And in the quiet, I swear I can almost hear her laughing, proud that her final chess move played out just the way she intended. She knew exactly who Tyler was. She knew the role greed would play. And she made sure, even after she was gone, that I'd be protected when the truth finally came out. She wasn't just one step ahead. She was miles ahead. Even in death, she was still watching out for me. Still teaching me. Still loving me, fiercely, unconditionally. Tyler thought he'd just scored the big prize the day he heard about my inheritance. But in the end? He walked right into the most graceful, brilliant trap I've ever seen. And I've never been more grateful.